Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. It's my pleasure to join this ESBG event today. As you heard, my name is LARBEY. I'm responsible for financial consumer protection and financial education and financial inclusion at the OECD. And as I think probably many of you know, the OECD has been leading work at the international level on financial education for some time now. The next slide, please. I thought I would cover today, set the scene with a little bit of policy context, and then I'll focus on this new competence framework that we've developed in collaboration with the EU to guide financial education work focused on children and youth. And I think that's very much in keeping with the theme of this conference about financial education being a vital tool for young people. And then I'll very briefly touch on some other work that we're doing in this area that may be of interest to you. So if we go to the next slide and then the next one. So as I'm sure many of you are aware, the role of the OECD as an international organization, our overarching goal is to work with governments to provide a forum for governments to come together to discuss issues, common challenges, and look for solutions, and together develop high-level policies to foster prosperity, equality, opportunity, and well-being for everybody. And we do that by drawing on evidence, real-life experience, through data collection, to develop international standards, recommendations, in response to a whole range of different issues affecting societies, economies, and the environment. And financial education is one of those areas, one of those policy domains that we work on. And if we go to the next slide, in terms of the big picture policy context, I think everybody in this room knows financial literacy is generally understood to be about the combination of knowledge, attitudes, skills, and behaviors that a person needs to be able to make confident and informed financial decisions. And these skills, attitudes, behaviors, and knowledge, and so on, can be acquired through financial education programs and initiatives. And I think everyone agrees it's very much a vital skill in today's dynamic and complex world of financial products and services, that people are financially literate or have the ability to become financially literate. And ultimately, the goal of that is to support their financial well-being. The financial well-being of individuals, of families, and of communities. But of course, financial literacy, the way that we approach this at the OECD, financial literacy is not by itself going to be enough. It's not going to solve all of the issues affecting, the financial issues affecting people all around the world. So we see that there are three interrelated policy agendas that together contribute to financial well-being, and one of those is financial literacy, financial education. But also, we need financial inclusion, by which we mean easy and barrier-free access to financial products and services, whether that's physical or digital, and a robust financial consumer protection framework, and in a system of laws and regulations to make sure that consumers are treated fairly, and that they're not subject to misconduct or other abuses in the market. So if we go to the next slide, coming back to our work on financial education. As I said, the OECD works with governments all around the world, with countries and governments. And in the field of financial education, we have a global network called the International Network on Financial Education. And this is our global community that's dedicated to advancing, discussing, sharing expertise and information on different topics and priorities relating to financial education programs and policy. The INFI has been operating for more than 15 years now, and there are over 270 institutions who are members of the INFI, public institutions, from over 130 countries and economies. So it's truly a global organization, allowing it to represent and hear diverse perspectives from all around the world, to be a truly inclusive global forum. And I should perhaps say the chair of the INFI is Magda Bianco from the Bank of Italy, and I know we have Maria Iridi with us today as well. If we go to the next slide, In terms of standards or benchmarks, the OECD is responsible for the international standard on financial literacy, which is the OECD recommendation in this space. And it's a comprehensive legal instrument covering a whole range of recommendations for governments, for public authorities, and all other stakeholders, actually, private and public sector, who are working on the design, implementation, and delivery of financial literacy policies. One of the main planks of the recommendation is to recommend that countries develop national strategies for financial literacy, which are effectively overarching policy mechanisms that allow all of the many different and diverse stakeholders in a country to get involved and share in a common objective or a common goal, which is to improve the financial literacy of individuals in their country. And we're working with a number of countries, and we have worked with a number of countries bilaterally. One of the projects we're working at the moment is to develop a national financial literacy strategy with Germany, which is a very exciting project, and we're working with a number of other countries as well. And the recommendation also, amongst many things, I won't go into all of the details, but it does specifically call out the need for a focus on particular target groups, where those target groups may be vulnerable to particular challenges. And one of those target groups identified in the recommendation is youth, young people, children and youth. Now, I'm sure you've already been discussing, and many of you will know, well, why would we include youth as a target group in the recommendation and in all of our general efforts to improve the financial education and financial literacy of young people? Well, there are a number of reasons for that. In particular, and importantly, we know that habits and attitudes towards money and money matters are formed from a very young age. We know that young people are exposed to money matters, that they're involved in financial decisions. Many are receiving money or dealing with money, again, from a young age. And we know that the consequences of poor financial decisions for young people can last a long time into their adult life. So there are a lot of good reasons to focus on youth as a sort of a key target group. From the last PISA assessment, we know that 54% of students, 15-year-olds, have or have a bank account. 45% of 15-year-olds hold some kind of payment card, and 73% of 15-year-olds had bought something online in the last 12 months. At the same time, fully 1 in 4 15-year-olds were unable to make simple decisions about everyday spending, and only 1 in 10 of students performed at the highest level of financial literacy. And these results are from the 2018 PISA assessment. So I'm sure that those statistics related to holding and using financial instruments amongst 15-year-olds have only increased since 2018. Okay, if we go on to the next slide, please. I'm going to now spend a few moments talking about this new financial competence framework that we have worked on in collaboration with the EU for children and young people. And of course, financial education programs and initiatives take many, many different forms. And I just wanted to focus on this one in particular, because it's particularly relevant to the topic for today. So I mentioned this OECD recommendation on financial literacy, which says something about the role of financial competencies. Financial competencies, well, what are they? What are we talking about? Competencies or competencies, I think the words are interchangeable. And essentially they are baseline descriptions of particular achievements in terms of knowledge, attitudes, skills or behaviors that we want people to show, to demonstrate in order to be able to observe, measure and assess that they are reach a certain level of financial literacy. And the recommendation talks about the importance of these competencies when designing programs for young people, effectively to provide a structure and guidance in terms of the content that such programs may deliver. Competencies should be reviewed regularly and revised as necessary, and they should reflect, obviously, the national, regional, and sometimes the local circumstances in which children and young people are operating. And in order to deliver such programs effectively, it's important that programs are designed and developed and based on well-defined core competencies frameworks, and that they take into account I guess, the broader environment in which young people are operating. So taking into account exposure to obviously literacy, education, numeracy, and so on and so forth. If we go to the next slide, the financial competence framework that we developed with the EU built on existing work that we've been doing at the OECD to develop core competency frameworks. We've been doing that since 2015, and these are freely available on our website. As I said, competencies are there to describe baseline levels of competence that we would expect children and young people to be able to demonstrate. I guess it's probably important to say that competence frameworks are only ever a guide. Becoming financially literate or obtaining financial skills is, of course, a dynamic process that occurs throughout someone's life. It's very much dependent on the individual in some ways, in their circumstances and their context. But it's important nonetheless to have, as I say, a guiding framework, particularly so that people who are designing programs and delivering programs have got some benchmarks against which to do that. And then for people who want to assess, to measure progress and impact of their programs. So this is the purpose of this framework. It's not a curriculum. It's not intended to be a school curriculum or anything like that. It's a framework. If we go to the next slide, just to then dig a bit deeper into this specific framework that, as I say, we developed recently in collaboration with the European Union, specifically DG FISMA. And I want to acknowledge Mr. Marcel Haag, the director of DG FISMA, who is, I think, speaking here today. So this was a project that we have been working on for about 18 months, and the competence framework was launched very, very recently on the 2nd of October, so just a few weeks ago, at an event here in Brussels. And this framework, as well as being an important deliverable for educators and program designers in the European Union, it also actually supports actions, measures announced in the EU Capital Markets 2020 Action Plan, and, as I said, builds on earlier work that we'd undertaken at the OECD to develop competence frameworks, including one that we had prepared for adults, also in collaboration with the European Union. So if we go to the next slide, just to look at some of the component parts of the framework in a little more detail. So the objectives of the framework are set out on this slide. I won't go through them all in detail, but as I say, essentially the purpose of a framework like this is to provide guidance to policymakers, to program designers, to educators, teachers, trainers, whoever is involved in developing, designing, and then delivering a financial literacy program for young people, and also those involved in the assessment and evaluation of such initiatives, because one of the things that runs right through our work of financial education is the importance of evaluation and measurement, continuous improvement, both in terms of the delivery of the programs themselves, but also to be able to measure progress and changes over time in terms of the level of financial literacy and the outcomes being achieved. If we go to the next slide, please, the overarching goals of the framework are to help children and young people to be able to manage their money more effectively in the short and long term. Again, I won't go through all of these in detail, but I think an important part of the framework is that it is also designed to help prepare young people or provide guidance for how to prepare young people for the economic and financial aspects of adult life, because obviously that's a very important part of a young people's journey, where they become increasingly exposed to and are expected to make decisions about money, whether it's decisions related to further education or career or moving out of home or paying taxes or getting a first job, whatever these decisions are. And this framework is also designed to try and set young people up well to be able to meet those challenges as they enter adult life. And if we go to the next slide, in terms of the scope, the framework, which, as I say, is freely available on the website, it's built around 3 different dimensions to support financial literacy. It's divided and categorized around different age groups, and you can see them on the slide. Basically, the competencies are, which we developed in consultation with experts from across the EU member states, are designed to be targeted or relevant to different age groups, and these age groups very broadly reflect the progression of education levels across the European Union. And of course, there are national specificities involved in that. And really the competencies are also designed to operate in a cumulative way, so that the knowledge is intended, or that the competencies are intended to be gathered over time. So there's a progression element to the competence framework. And the framework is also built around a number of contexts which take its inspiration from PISA. So education and work, home and family, individual, and then societal. These reflecting the different contexts in which financial decisions arise and financial skills are required. That last one, of course, reflects the role of the individual within broader society. So including things such as I mentioned, entering adult life and entering the world of work or further education, but also concerns around the environment and broader societal considerations as well. We go to the next slide, please, to look a little bit more closely at the architecture of the framework. It's built around key content areas, which are set out on this slide. These content areas set out the key topics and then the relevant outcome-based competencies related to the topics. There are subtopics. As I said, it's divided by age group and also by contexts as well. You can see the four broad categories of content area on the slide there. And then if we go to the next slide, sitting across or going horizontally across those content areas are what we call cross-cutting dimensions. And these are highlighted in the framework. And these are exactly as it says, cross-cutting dimensions, areas of competence that cut across those content areas in terms of money topics and are relevant across the board. And in the framework, these different cross-cutting dimensions are highlighted in different colors so that people can easily see them when they're using the framework in a practical way. And so they cover things such as digitalization, sustainable finance, citizenship, which is all about fostering a sense of community and one's role in a broader community environment and the society. I mentioned entering adulthood and the different financial decisions and choices and challenges that come with that. I appreciate this probably all feels somewhat academic, but this is giving you, painting a picture of the framework. And in the next slide, though, you can see that the framework has a navigational tool which actually allows people who are using it, so whether they're policymakers, program designers, or educators themselves, to use the tool to be able to sort through the framework based on these different categories and categorizations that I've been mentioning. So if people want to understand the competencies of a particular topic area, they can. If they want to search by a particular cross-cutting dimension, they can. If they want to search by or develop something for a particular age group, they can. So it's designed to be as user-friendly as possible, capturing all these different elements and components of the framework. And then if we go to the next slide, having now developed and launched the framework, the next steps are, of course, to promote and encourage its use. It's obviously, as I said, it's there as a guidance, it's there as a framework. It can be used by EU member states and also by non-EU countries as well. I think that's very important. The framework is likely to be very relevant, if not just as relevant, to non-EU countries as well. So everyone can benefit from this framework. It will be translated into all EU languages by the end of this year. And then during the course of next year and beyond, will of course be facilitating the uptake of the framework in different ways. So both in terms of its use in developing policies and education materials, and also we'll be looking to, which is something sort of very much with the way that we work at the OECD, to create opportunities for people to exchange experiences and good practices that they've developed when using the framework and the lessons that they've learned, so that we can, as I said, continuously refine and improve what's available. If we go to the next slide, and just in terms of finishing up, I wanted to just touch on some other work that we're doing that's relevant to financial education and youth. And if you go to the next slide, so as I said, through the International Network of Financial Education, we produce a range of policy guidance, all of which is available on the website, including sort of best practices and approaches and experiences relating to the delivery of financial education in schools. Importantly, I wanted to mention PISA. I mentioned the importance of measurement and assessment and evaluation, and that's something obviously at the OECD we're very, very committed to. You've probably all heard of PISA. Everyone, most people know the OECD for the PISA education assessments. Well, there is an assessment, if we go to the next slide, a voluntary assessment for countries to participate in as part of PISA, which looks specifically at assessing the financial literacy of students, and these are students at 15 years old. As you know, PISA covers as core subjects reading, maths and science knowledge, and financial literacy is a voluntary assessment option, which has been running since 2012. And the last published available PISA results were collected in 2018, and they were the ones that I was quoting at the beginning of my presentation in terms of some of the statistics and findings that we had, where 20 countries participated in this assessment, both OECD and non-OECD countries. And the next edition will be published next year in 2024. The data collection was conducted in 2022. It was going to be 2021, but it was put back by a year because of the pandemic. And what PISA does, and what this does, as you would have guessed from when I was quoting various statistics and findings, what it's intended to do is to assess students' ability to face real-life situations involving financial issues and decisions, and then obviously look across countries and produce a sort of an aggregate or a global sense of students' financial literacy skills in the relevant year in question. And then the next slide, I think. Okay, I did have another slide about Global Money Week, just to mention we also run at the OECD the Global Money Week. This is a week-long campaign where countries all around the world get involved in activities to promote the financial literacy of young people. All different stakeholders and so on can become involved. The next year Global Money Week will take place in March. I think it's the week beginning the 18th of March. And the theme for Global Money Week will be about protecting your money and protecting your financial future. And this has a number of different ways that it can apply. But one of the particular issues that we're looking to address in Global Money Week next year is the very significant increase in financial scams and frauds that target all people, but including young people as well. We've seen some very particular instances of that. So you can find more about Global Money Week on the website, and your country, your organization would be very, very welcome to get involved, of course, and to support the global effort. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Miles. Very good. I'm not sure we have time for questions. We hadn't, he needs to run, I'm afraid. So thank you so much.